Hello and welcome to another edition of Convict Inc. I'm your host, Robert Rosso. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so. I'm looking at my hat. If you like this video, please push like and share with your family, friends, neighbors, enemies, etc. Pets in prison. We've seen movies about guys in prison that are lonely and bored, so they have little mice they have as pets, or roaches, or praying mantises, or spiders, and whatnot. A lot of it's true. So I've known guys that have trapped little mice, keep them in their locker or under the bed or whatever. The mice don't really go far. They kind of train them because they kept them fed. At the Federal Correctional Institution in Terre Haute, Indiana, they have on the yard things that are called 13-line or 13-stripe ground squirrels. They're like little chipmunks. And if you don't know what they are, go look them up. Like I said, it's 13-line or 13-stripe ground squirrels. They're little squirrels, but they look just like little chipmunks. They're cute. I mean, they're just a cute little squirrels. During the wintertime, of course, they hibernate. They bury themselves under the ground. Around April-ish, they pop up out of the ground, and you'll see them pretty much all the way until October or November when it starts getting cold again. Depending on the year, the yard was like flooded with these squirrels. I mean, I have been there, let's say during 2015 and 16, when you walk out in the yard in the morning, I mean, these things are just everywhere, like everywhere in the yard. And on the baseball field, they can cause problems because they do dig holes. The way they usually work is they dig holes that have two entrances, and the holes kind of are like this. I forgot how many feet they were. Again, you can Google it. It tells you all about them. I think each squirrel will have, 4 to 6 babies or something like that. So if they don't try to control them, and they do poison them after a while, depending on the year, how much squirrels get out there, they get out of hand. And like I said, they're everywhere. It is common for inmates to go out after chow or in the morning and feed these squirrels. These squirrels would eat anything. They loved nutty bars. They loved cheese puffs, basically whatever you'd feed them. And there was nothing funnier than seeing a squirrel like this big holding a cheese puff like 3 times its size. Also, they loved peanut butter. So guys used to get peanut butter jars that were half-ass empty, put the peanut butter jar down, let the squirrels go in, and that was one of the ways to capture them. Many guys would take these squirrels, especially as babies, and bring them back to their block, into their cells, and keep them as pets. I have had 3 of these little squirrels as pets during my 11 years of incarceration at that prison. What I did with them, the first one I got, I named Chipper. I think it was Chipper or Cracker. That was another one I named. Yeah, it was like a white thing. But Chipper and Cracker. And I was in a cell by myself, cell 78 in C block. And what I did was I put the squirrel out on the window ledge. So there's windows. The windows, how did they open? They slide up and down. Damn, I'm trying to think of how the windows work. But anyway, if you open the windows and you kept them on the outside, there's about a space this big, and they would literally climb up and down the screen on the outside. And it was funny. Now, of course, they didn't have too much room to go if you left them on the window ledge. And I'm trying to think exactly how the windows open and close so I can describe it. Man, it hasn't been that long and I already forgot. But what I would do is I'd take a peanut butter jar, you put a sock in a peanut butter jar, and that's where they slept. Like if it was in a hole. And of course, you change the sock every couple of days because they get dirty and nasty and start stinking inside. And then when you came in and you wanted to mess with the squirrel, you take it down and you shut the door, make sure you barricaded the door if there was a hole underneath, and you let this thing cruise around the cell. Again, I was conscious I had a really clean cell, so if the thing, went to the bathroom, I'd clean it up immediately. But guys would come in and they love these squirrels. The first one I had was awesome. I got it. It was a baby. It was about dying, and I nursed it to life. And that thing would sleep like on my belly or sleep, beside the end of the bed or whatever. And it was like no problem. And then if I put it on the bed and I was sitting on my chair, it would literally jump off the bed. It would like jump this far onto my lap, or not just me, but anybody that come to the cell. And about 3 weeks after me having it, I realized, man, this is kind of cruel. Like I need to bring it back outside. You know what I mean? It's not where they're supposed to live. They're not supposed to be in a cell block. Even though they got used to eating just junk food, that's what it survived on, and I gave it water. I brought it back outside, not knowing what would happen. And let me tell you something. When you take a squirrel like that out of its natural habitat for a while, so I guess it starts to smell like human, or the human food or whatever. So when I brought this thing back outside, I brought it to where the hole in which it was, where it was caught. And you know, the brothers and sisters, of course it was a runt still. And let me say this, if you bring it into the cell blocks, that stunts their growth. They don't get to grow to their natural size, probably because of the grass they eat or whatever. But it does stunt their growth. And also it was a runt to begin with. It was almost dead when somebody brought it to me. The guy who brought it to me was a Puerto Rican guy named Javier. And by the way, Javier was like, caught all animals. He had a sparrow that he kept in his cell that had broken its wing. And yeah, that was a nasty ass cell, by the way. So I brought it outside and I kind of stepped away and it froze and it really didn't know what to do. And that had been gone 3 weeks. I walked away to see what happened, and here comes what would probably be its brothers and sisters. And they kind of went around it and sniffed around it. And then I went and walked back by, they scattered. I walked away, and as I walked away, I seen them like gang members all teaming up on him, and they just started like, bam, abusing the hell out of the squirrel. I walked back over, they split again. My squirrel was stuck. I thought about taking it back into the cell, but I didn't. And when I went back around, the last thing I saw was them dragging it off into a hole. I had not researched at the time. For sure they killed this thing. They do kill each other, and they will eat their own. So that happened. Now, there were other guys that would have squirrels. They would bring them inside. Sometimes they put them on the top bunk. They'd jump off the top bunk, boom, and they'd kill themselves. I don't really know of a squirrel that like lasted a whole season or a whole summer. At one time, there were so many squirrels in different blocks that they had shakedowns in order to take the squirrels out, and they put a memo up that if anybody got caught with the squirrel in their cell, it was going to be like a shot or a disciplinary. Who else loved these little squirrels were hawks. We had a bunch of hawks that were, and a couple eagles actually in the around the yard. I say a couple, there was one for sure I remember, but the hawks would eat them. And you know, you'd be out in the yard, especially during the evening time, and all of a sudden this hawk would just swoop in, snatch up this squirrel out of nowhere, and then just start picking it, eating it. And a bunch of inmates would gather around, look at it, and just be tearing its guts out. Hawk didn't care. You know, Hawk wasn't tripping off the inmates. Well, there was a friend of mine by the name of Kid. Kid was a youngster, straight full, about 25 years old at the time. And him and a bunch of his friends used to go outside in the morning, high on Suboxone, and catch these squirrels and feed them to the hawks. And this is what they did. They got gallon jugs, you know, thermos, you know, what you keep water in. And they figured out if you take these jugs, fill them up with water, and put them in the hole, the babies would get drowned out and come back out of the hole, and you can just pick them up. In one day, I think they caught like 26 of these squirrels. And watching up in the corners were the hawks, especially one of them. So what ended up happening is the hawk paid attention to what Kid and his friends were doing. They kept doing this day after day, by the way. Let me tell you, if certain prisoners were in the yard at this time, there would have been fights over this. I remember an old man when I got there back in 2012 that he didn't like you talking to a certain group of squirrels on a certain group of yard. It was territorial. To him, those were his squirrels. And this was probably, you know, a couple dozen squirrels. They were like, he had them named. He knew what family which belonged to, and he was very territorial over this, and he fed them, talked to them, didn't want nobody to touch them. People get weird over pets like that in prison. Kid and his friends got away with doing what they're doing at this particular time because there was nobody attached to these squirrels. Yes, guys didn't like what they were doing, but nobody really challenged them. And they were youngsters in their 20s who really didn't care and probably would have fought over it anyway. Anyway, so what ended up happening is they ended up getting one of the hawks that would come down, and where there was a pit, that's where the Indians had their, what do you call it? Their sweat lodge. And it was just a little chain link fence around a little area. The Indians had one section and the Odinists had the other. That was on the yard. So the chain link fence, just imagine a fence in the backyard about that high. The hawk would come and sit on the chain link fence. You can damn near walk up to it and it wouldn't do nothing to you. You can get within an arm length and it wouldn't move. What Kid ended up doing was he would bring the hawk babies and toss it to the hawk, and the hawk would just grab it and just rip it apart and eat it. So the hawk got so lazy that it no longer needed to fly down and swoop in and catch it. It would just sit there and wait for Kid to feed it. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know if you've ever seen a hawk tear apart an animal, but I mean, it's pretty damn gruesome, you know, when it really comes down to it. But a Kid ended up getting locked up for an investigation and was transferred. And the last year before COVID, they came in and they put a bunch of poison and killed a bunch of them. As a matter of fact, after COVID, we got locked down. During that summer, 2020, they let us out during the end of the summer for like an hour a day, once a week or whatever it was. And there was very, very few squirrels. There was squirrels, but there was very few. On that yard, there was a lot of wildlife, a lot of cats, a lot of skunks. And I'm going to tell you something. There was so many baby skunks after COVID because nobody was around to chase them off and stuff. The skunks were like emboldened. I remember like the skunks wouldn't bother you if you're like 10 feet away. But I mean, there were skunks everywhere in that yard during the COVID times. But I just thought I'd tell the story. Somebody mentioned something about pets or squirrels in my live chat a little while ago. But if anybody had been to FCI Terre Haute, they know all about these ground squirrels or 13-striped squirrels. But again, you know, I can tell a whole bunch of different stories about guys having squirrels and having them fight in their cells and just different stuff. But the most memorable was Kid and his group of friends who used to catch them and feed them to the hawks. And if you watched a hawk pursue these squirrels, now let me tell you this. You'd see a whole bunch of squirrels on the yard, and they were all looking out for danger, you know? So like hawks, for example. And all across the yard, if they saw a hawk or a shadow, you'd see all of them run to their holes real quick. Like they'd all disappear instantly. It was really amazing. Then you get one or two stupid squirrels or slow squirrels, that's who the hawk would get. Yeah, just really, really fascinating to watch that whole wildlife thing. And although it was kind of cruel a little bit what Kid and those dudes were doing, I mean, I used to watch. I didn't complain because it was pretty neat seeing them just go feed a hawk, lazy ass hawk, fat ass hawk, just like, I am flying no more. I'm just gonna wait for Kid to come feed me. It was crazy. Anyway, I thought I'd put out something a little different today. Yeah, Squirrels in Prison. And yeah, FCI Terre Haute. That's about it. All right, where's my clicker? Hope you enjoyed.